again, this is all raw material. We are literally writing this live. So excuse any bumps, bruises, or detours along the way. And honestly, thank you for participating in this because it helps us test the material and hone it for future classes. So thank you. So before we get into this, I just want you guys to remember, without the right positioning, generating leads will be difficult at best. And that goes back to the conversation that we were just having. It's like, is the positioning perfect? If not, generating leads is going to be tough. It's going to be tough. So let's dig in. Obviously, this is how to find new clients, but this is actually round 2, generating great leads. I love the fact that we had a good lead into this. So perfect. Word of advice, though. Word of advice. Take what you need. We're going to get tactical here. We're going to try and sprinkle in as many stories as we can, but we're going to give you some tactics to take away and try. And so I don't want you guys to be drinking from the fire hose. So, listen to what we have to say, take what you need, ask clarifying questions, and then, apply what fits. So let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. Number 1, intro to lead gen. We're going to cover how the numbers don't lie. We'll also talk about the basics, like kind of the prereqs, what you need to start generating leads. Then we're going to cover building relationships, the basics on that. And then what everybody's after, those outbound tactics. Obviously, we're not going to do Q&A twice. Well, I guess we could. But we also have some homework for you guys and some next steps. So like I said, it's a lot. So let's dig in. Intro to lead generation. What is lead generation? Honestly, it's a marketing process that identifies and attracts potential buyers. And guys, when we're thinking about this, the difference between lead gen and marketing is that identifying factor. We want to be able to put a name and an email address and identify who these people are. That's the main difference. Now, some people call this prospecting. I'm not a huge fan of the word prospecting, but the terminology really is flexible around this because there's no one true business definition. But here's the bottom line. You need to find and nurture new opportunities. We have to do this to stay in business. But the thing is that to a stranded ship, every gust of wind looks like an opportunity. So how do we know which ones to pursue and how many? And that gets down to that classic debate. What's better, quantity or quality? And really the answer with lead generation is both. But the thing is that the positioning is really going to determine the level of quality that you're bringing in. So today I want to focus on quantity. So numbers don't lie. By the end of this module, you guys are going to be math wizards, data scientists. No, just kidding. But we do need to start measuring what we do and kind of keeping track of things. Peter Drucker said this: what is measured improves. And I think that is fantastic. And we have to start measuring the activities that we do around lead gen and sales. And I'm going to tell you why that's important. So last time we got together, we asked you guys, how many leads did you get last week? And we kind of averaged up the answers, and the average answer was 4. So 4 leads per week.
Actually, I think that was on the high end.
It was a little bit on the high end. We're giving a little bit. There were a lot of zeros, a lot of ones in there too. But let's say the average answer was 4. And if we extrapolate that out, our leads per month is 16. So the question, is this enough? Is this enough leads to pull in enough new clients to support your business?
Sounds like a lot. 16
it
sounds
does,
like
right?
a lot of
16
leads.
opportunities. But remember that analogy. To a stranded ship, every gust of wind looks like an opportunity. But there's an easy way to figure out how many leads we need to bring in to get the clients that we need. It's this formula. First, we take the number of qualified leads that we have. We multiply that by our close rate. And then that's how many new clients we'll gain.
Makes perfect sense.
So let's break this down even further, just in case anybody's lost. Qualified leads. What does that mean? Well, a qualified lead is somebody that can afford us, somebody that has a problem that we can actually solve, and somebody that fits our target market. These are all questions that go into qualifying a lead. And we've seen, like with Blind, our lead qualification rate, it's about 10%.
Wow.
That means 1 in 10 leads that we generate
Right.
is a good fit. And I have to be honest, a lot of it is budgetary. Not
Right.
many people can afford what we do, and that's okay. So if we keep that kind of rate in mind and apply it to the number of leads that we're bringing in per month, 10% of 16 is 1.6. So that means we only have 1.6 qualified leads per month.
Interesting.
Blind's only bringing in 16 leads per month. So
Right.
let's
That's not a
continue
lot.
to.
That
it's
doesn't
not.
sound like a lot.
That's literally almost 2 at-bats per month.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So
Not
let's
good.
take a look at the close rate. Close rate is basically the number of jobs that you won divided by the sent proposals, your number of sent proposals. So the easy way to calculate this is take a look at last year,
Mm-hmm.
add up all of the proposals that you sent out to all of your different opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
and then make sure that you're dividing the jobs won, how many new clients you onboarded, by that number.
Mm-hmm.
So that's your close rate. Now, let's just say industry averages, you won 5 jobs last year,
Mhm.
and you sent 25 proposals.
Mm-hmm.
That's a close rate of 20%. That means you're winning 20% of the jobs that you kind of go for.
Mm-hmm.
Industry average for us in terms of advertising and marketing and creative services is actually lower than that. According to HubSpot, it's only 11%.
That is terrible.
Terrible. But let's say you guys are awesome and you're closing 20%. Now, not to brag, but Blind in 2017, our close rate was 54%,
It's a little more than half.
a little more than half.
My personal close rate was a little bit higher than that. I just want to let Ben know. I brought the average up.
So we're going to teach you guys how to do this, but let's go ahead and apply all the math to the formula. So we have 1.6 qualified leads and a close rate of 20%. That means you're getting 0.32 new clients per month.
Oh, what does that translate to?
It translates to 1 client every 3 months.
Now that sounds very
Is that
desolate.
enough?
That sounds
I don't
very
think so.
sparse.
Yeah.
My gosh.
So
Okay.
the whole point, I'm sure that you guys are brain hurting a little. It's a lot of math, especially for creative people. But the whole point is that we need to increase the quality. There's a different way to look at this. I'm sure you guys have seen this before. It's the marketing funnel. And let's just walk through this. All this terminology is kind of in flex. Depends on where you go. They put different labels on each of these sections. But this is the way that I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
First, you've got your target market,
Which we identified in the niche.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Then as soon as they get exposed to something that you put out there, marketing, website, something like that, now they're aware that you exist. So and they're in that top of the funnel. They're aware that you are a company. Then there's an inquiry, and now all of a sudden they are a lead. And not every lead is good.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to qualify them. And as soon as they go through the qualification, now they're a qualified lead. And then hopefully all the way down at the bottom, we convert them, we close them, and they become our clients.
That's the 0.36.
That's the 0.32, right?
It's like a little droplet.
Yeah, I've always had a problem with this shape too,
Right.
because this shape, I mean, if it were really like this, it looks like we would lose maybe 10 to 20% at each step,
Right.
when really it actually kind of looks like this,
Right.
where you have the number of people who are aware that you exist, and then it kind of funnels down really quickly. So, it's less of a funnel and more of like a marketing thumbtack. But the rest of the business bootcamp, we're gonna cover how to diagnose people. We're gonna cover taking someone from a lead and turning them into a client really, really beautifully. The diagnosing is in there for qualification. That's what we're gonna cover in the rest of the class. Today, it's all about exposure. It's all about awareness.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you guys can get on board with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's a lot. Do we need to pause for any kind of clarification?
Some people we went fast a little bit through the formula.
Okay.
So that's either rewatchable or we could go back to that slide. But really the only clarifying question that Brandon had is, what was the third bullet for qualified lead? He said, can afford, can we help, and was it a good fit for our values and beliefs? Or
Right. Does it
good
fit
for
the
our marketing?
positioning? Do we want to work with them? That's kind of like the X factor there.
Right. And I would just suggest moving forward, Ben, I know you're flowing, slow down a little bit on some of these slides, because I just
Cool.
want to make sure people are getting this. And obviously we're going to provide this to you guys as a recording after the fact. So don't feel stressed out if you miss something.
Yeah.
And we could bring it up in the Q&A.
Like I said, it's a lot.
Woo. All right.
All right. So moving forward, let's go over the basics. So these are things that are kind of prerequisites before you start going out and hunting. You want to make sure that your bases are covered. And I'm going to give you this list, and we'll go deep into each one. First, exist online. Make sure you're befriending Google. Make sure that you're presenting credibility. Be credible. Next, rehearse clarity. And then we're also going to want to broadcast what we do to our people. Have breadcrumbs, and finally, make hit lists. So let's just take a look at each one of these things. So the first, make sure that you have a presence online. And this is really tailored to your target market and the things that you do. But at the very minimum, make sure that you have a website. Make sure that you have a Facebook page. Make sure that you have a LinkedIn page. These are standard things that every business should have.
Mm-hmm.
Then, depending on what you make, you're going to want to appear on the social media of that kind of craft. Right. So if you're a photographer, make sure you have an Instagram account. Mm-hmm. If you are a video guy, make sure that you're on YouTube or Vimeo. Mm-hmm. If you're a designer, Dribbble, Behance.
Right.
Just going to make sure if somebody searches you or somebody finds you online, that you actually exist.
Right. And you don't have to be everywhere, like Ben is saying. Just be on the platforms that are appropriate to your niche and craft.
Right. Okay, next up, make Google work for you. So the biggest thing here is just to create a My Business listing on Google. And I can tell you guys from experience, we get a lot of leads at Blind, and I got a lot of leads when I was running my own shop, simply from people typing in design agency or branding agency who are close to us. Because if you're local, Google's going to prioritize your listing above everybody else's.
Oh, that's awesome.
And the only way that you can control that is just by getting a business profile. Mm-hmm. This is totally free, by the way. You can do this absolutely free. So make sure that you claim that for your business, and obviously make sure that you're adhering to basic SEO principles for your website. Mm-hmm. Just make Google work for you. All right. So this is something that's going to get you to stand out from the crowd, stand out from the freelancers of the world and the kind of low-priced service providers. But you're going to want to appear credible, even if you don't feel it. And I remember in the early days, I didn't really feel credible because it was just me in my garage. And I felt weird about moving away from a gmail.com email address and getting a domain name. But that's one thing that you can do to appear credible to your audience.
So you just have a domain-specific email.
Yep.
Not
exactly.
a Gmail.
Yep.
Not a Yahoo, not a
global. Hotmail.
Hotmail now.
xfactor@hotmail.com.
Gotcha.
Yeah. All right. Another tip. Make sure that you're rehearsing your positioning statement. And really, that's just telling people and making sure that you're saying the words of what you do. And the key here is stop telling people that, you're a designer. You're going to want to practice your positioning statement so that when somebody asks, hey, what do you do? You're able to say, oh, I help X do Y, to be specific. Mm-hmm. And there's a reason behind that, because if you tell somebody that you're a designer, it's kind of a dead end road. They're going to think about you designing, about you using computers, or wondering what you make. But if you tell somebody specifically what you do for who, now they're making connections. It's like, oh yeah, I know somebody that was interested in blockchain the other day. Let me go ahead and, you know what? I can connect you with him.
Right. It's a repeatable story.
It's a repeatable story.
If you just say you're a designer, the other person doesn't know how to connect the dots.
Right.
But if you have something ultra tight, like we mentioned last week, it's a repeatable story. It's like, oh, I know Ben. He's a designer that helps stand up websites for startups in blockchain technology.
Yep.
Boom. Like I know 2 people to connect you to.
Yep. Yeah. And then the next step is to make sure that you're telling your people what you do often. So this is really your friends, your family, your current network. Make sure that you're broadcasting your wins to them, because they're going to be the connectors for you. But they're only going to remember if you broadcast it. Make sure that you're telling them, share those wins. All right. This is a big one. Having breadcrumbs. Now, breadcrumbs are basically next step. So these are things like business cards or linking to your website in your email signature, or making sure that you're providing a next step on your website, like say at the bottom of a case study, making sure that you're linking to the next case study or linking to your contact form. You're going to want to give that customer a next step. So make sure that it's a philosophy that you can bring to anytime you're doing business. Making sure that you have breadcrumbs for customers to follow is really important.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and the last one. Now, we started this last time. Build and maintain target hit lists. So obviously it's a difficult thing to do because you have to do a lot of digging. But let's get specific here. So here's some hit list ideas. You guys are already working on this, right? The dream clients, the top 30 companies in your target audience. And we asked you for 100. And I'm glad that some of you guys are kind of struggling with that because it's a stretch. So putting together a list of your dream clients, that way, it's always top of mind.
Mm-hmm.
You're always kind of eyeballing the people who you meet for that opportunity to connect with the dream client.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about supply chain, companies that support or manufacture or supply your target market. It's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
There's also the underdogs in your space. And these are like smaller, growing companies. I would go for 200 here. And the easiest way to do this is to go shopping. So what I did, I really wanted to focus in like tactical gear or outdoor kind of apparel. So what I did was I pulled open a catalog and I found a whole bunch of brands that had maybe 1 or 2 products in the catalog. And then I started compiling my list based on those brands. Now, these are people that I never heard of.
Mm-hmm.
They were underdogs in the space, but they had gotten 1 product in a catalog, and that's all it needed for me to, connect the dots.
Mm-hmm. I do something similar when I look for brands that I want to connect with and partner with.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just start following people on Instagram, and then Instagram will tell me, here's 5 other recommended accounts just like that.
Perfect.
So I just keep adding them if I'm getting very specific about a particular niche, because algorithms are really good at grouping things together.
Yep.
And this is an easy way to find potential brands and companies to work with.
It's also a great way to educate yourself on the target market because you are looking for companies in the space. And if they're hard to find, now all of a sudden you can start making recommendations to these customers. So it's a great way to do some research on that target.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Okay. So quick Q&A. There was one question from Danielle.
Mm-hmm.
She asked, if I can't get my domain at a .com, what's the next best top-level domain for my agency? I don't think there's a standard, really. I think you just want to have something custom that is a follow-through URL.
Right.
So it's not just a generic Gmail or Yahoo, but that the domain points to your website, something about you.
And I hate that it's this way, right? I really wish that in professional circles, you could just use a Gmail address and it wouldn't be an issue. But even as a creative director here at Blind, whenever I get emailed from a company that has a gmail.com address, it's just that it's like that instant kind of knocked down on the totem pole.
Right. It feels like, oh, this is maybe a temporary employee. They don't have their website up. Like, how legit are they? You start inventing all these stories about the person you're interacting with or deciding not to interact with that person at all.
Visions of this person sitting in their garage in their underwear come to mind. Yeah.
So before we move on, are there any other specific questions to what we just covered? I know Ben just kind of blazed through that pretty quickly because we have a lot of material to go through. But I'm hoping that this checklist of things you should be doing in terms of having a presence online, like these are things that you guys are mostly doing at this point.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you guys are in this class, I would hope that you're doing most of this stuff.
Right.
Okay.
Cool. Well, we're getting questions more specific to platforms and stuff. And I think we're going to cover that later in this webinar. So
cool.
Perfect.
All right. So outbound tactics. Now that you've got your bases covered, let's go over outbound tactics. And this means that you're going to have to reach out to people. And I know that many of you don't like that, right? Me being a creative person, when I first started lead generation, I just tried to avoid this like a plague. I don't like this at all. Mm-hmm. That's what you need to do.
You have to do it. You really have to. It's uncomfortable, especially if you're socially shy, like I grew up, and something that I've had to continually work on.
Yeah.
The portfolio is not going to bring them in.
Right.
All the inbound stuff, which we're not going to cover today, like those are things that are part of a longer term play, but outbound really is key to drum up new business.
And really, honestly, it is tough, but it's quicker. It shortens the timeline for you. And that's why we want to give you guys these tactics and these strategies to start networking with people and reaching out. And we're not alone here. This is a quote from Jim Rohn. To succeed in sales, simply talk to lots of people every day. And here's what's exciting. There are lots of people.
It's so true.
I love that. And then a quote from the man himself, Blair Enns. When you need leads quickly, there is no substitution for a flurry of well-constructed emails and phone calls. Now, this is from the Inbound King. And the key there is when you need leads quickly. So before we get into the actual specific tactics and strategies, let's take a look at some fundamentals about building relationships.
Okay. So building relationships, this is going to be relevant both in your business and professional life, but in your personal life as well. And it's all the same. The thing is, the key to any good biz dev is building strong relationships. And your goal when you guys are going out there to do some lead generation and drum up business is to make a connection, not a sale. I think a lot of people go out there expecting that they're going to pitch, spam, and I'm going to keep dropping all the 100 emails, my email template to 100 people, and maybe I'll get a connection. But the thing is, if you're trying to make the sale on the first interaction, that's probably where you're failing already. There are ways to do that, but it's not the ideal way. The approach is not to spray and pray, but really, it's really to have this personalized precision dialogue with your target audience. So you got to spend time developing relationships and not just assuming, yelling out to the word, I'm available.
Like standing on the corner with a megaphone,
right,
preaching the good word. Yeah.
Right. It's like you want to have nice conversations with real people because that's what people appreciate, right? You want to avoid trying to propose on the first date. Right? You want to ask the person out first. You want to build a little bit of rapport. You want to make sure that this person's cool before you do anything. So trying to make a sale on the first initiation of contact is like trying to propose on the first date and they haven't even met you yet.
Yeah.
That is a wrong way to go.
It'll get you in trouble.
It'll get you in a lot of trouble. And the thing is, when you guys do biz dev, you might have to develop some thick skin. And the thick skin is you have to go in without any expectations, and because there's no guarantees that somebody might even respond to you. And if you go in with expectations, then you're going to be butthurt and you're going to be discouraged when you don't get an email back from the most perfectly crafted email that we just are sharing with you guys today. Go in with zero expectations because you know what? Some people don't pay attention to this stuff or life happens, right? And some people, they don't even check certain platforms. Like I know Ben, I'm very active on LinkedIn, but Ben, not so much. He doesn't really go on there that much. So don't be butthurt if he doesn't respond to you.
Last time I checked, I had like, it said 99 plus messages.
So you maxed out.
Yeah.
So yeah, just go in with zero expectations. And I want you guys to think about the last service outreach email you got. I don't know if you guys get this, but because at Blind, I have creative director in my title, and I think that's populated out there in the internet. So I get all kinds of service providers trying to contact me. And I got this one just last week, and I'll read it for you guys. It's kind of funky. It says, hey, this is Jesse, account executive over at Drazen Fabrics. I just want to circle back around. Can we meet next Wednesday? I wanted to drop off some fabric samples. Here's a link to our website. You can check us out. If you want to schedule a meeting here, you can book it with this link, or you can check out more on this gallery.
You just hear the shotgun.
Right. It's like, this person said zero about me. Why do I even want drapes? The problem is with a lot of these pitch emails, and I've been guilty of this before too. I'm not claiming that I have never committed this sin, but the problem with a lot of these types of emails is that it's so focused on me, the person who's sending it, and I'm spending zero time thinking about them and what they want and what they need. So when you guys are doing biz dev and when you're looking about relationships, you really should be focusing on the other person. And we're going to focus a lot on this throughout the bootcamp. So this is not going to be the first time you're going to hear this. And really the way you should be approaching it is you should be giving more than you're getting.
Right.
With these pitch emails, typically it's like, gimme, 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 buy, buy, buy. Don't you want my stuff? Don't you want my stuff? No, you should be giving value. You should be adding value. So here's my simple approach when it comes to pretty much every relationship that I have in my life. When I'm trying to make friends, when I'm trying to make connections, this is the approach I use both in business and professional settings, or personal and professional settings.
I was going to say, whoa.
That I'm all business, man. So here's the approach. It's be genuine, be curious, add value, and then go in for the ask. And I'm going to break down what each of these mean for you guys, and I'm going to give you guys example. But be genuine, meaning look for something to genuinely connect with another human being. Look for something to genuinely compliment the other person on. Just be genuine and be a good human being. Be curious, ask a lot of questions. When you ask questions, these are ways to get in and start to uncover and surface things that might be important to them. Once you understand that you could add value, once you understand what's important to them, you might be able to suggest things or demonstrate ways that are helping them achieve the things that they're interested in. And once you've demonstrated enough value, that's rapport, that's trust, then you can go in for the ask. So let's go to a couple examples so that you guys can see. So the first one, my favorite way to connect with people is DMing. I know a lot of people are not down, and maybe for your country it's not down, because I think culturally in the US this is very acceptable. Like there's a lot of engagement that goes down in the direct message, the DM, right? They have a whole song about this. It goes down in the DM. And Gary Vee is like prolific about this. He's constantly talking about DMing people. I know in other cultures it's maybe feels a little awkward, and again, take this all with a grain of salt and apply this whatever seems important and applicable for your situation. So the key here is we're on social platforms, so you got to be social on social. It's a funny thing, but a lot of people use social passively. Like they're going to go and start scrolling and looking at stuff, but not engage, not talk, and not develop relationships in the communities that they want to be in. But here's a way that you might get involved on the community. Once you establish your niche, like Ben had talked about it in terms of getting into outdoorsy gear, you're going to look at the trending hashtag in your niche. Just look it up on Instagram or Twitter, see what are the top performers there, and then look for the businesses and profiles that are performing well in there. So you're just going to go through those, look at the posts, and start engaging, start asking questions, start complimenting, and just start developing your presence in that niche. People are going to start noticing on the channel, on the future YouTube, we have a lot of regulars. And these regulars, they comment on all the videos all the time, and they DM me all the time. And I feel like I know them.
Yeah.
And some people I talked to online for years, and then I meet them in real life. I was like, oh, wow, you're a real human being. And it's totally cool. It's not weird at all.
I met somebody the other day, and just so that I could connect the dots with who this person was, I was like, hey, show me your profile picture.
Right. Because sometimes people have funny avatars.
Brands, yeah. Right. It's like the logo or something. And I was like, oh, yeah. Hey, how you doing, man? Just,
I know you.
Yeah.
Like, we've been talking for years.
Yeah.
So it goes down in the DM. And I just want to show you, this was one DM sequence that I had with a potential guest that I wanted to be on the show. So this guy runs a much bigger channel, and I reached out to him. It's like, hey, I really love your content. I'm devouring it right now. So I'm paying him a compliment. He responded. He's like, oh, wow, how did you find us in the first place? So we started this conversation. Second one, I was being curious. Now I'm asking him questions. I'm curious, do you ever share your materials with a creative audience? Do you have more material like that? Because I want to consume more like that. I want to learn more about what it is you do specific to creatives. So now I'm asking questions to see if there are openings for us to jump in. So I'm just being curious. I'm just asking questions here. Then the next thing is where I'm adding value. Oh, by the way, if you want to help spread your message, I run this YouTube channel. We have about 160,000 subs. And so this was a while ago.
It was a while ago.
Yeah, we have 500,000 now, right? And if you ever wanted to spread your message, I would love to have you on the show. And he's like, oh, for sure. What show? And then we started continuing. And eventually I made the ask. And I was like, well, let's connect through email. So after that, we exchanged emails, and we got him on the show. So it's pretty cool.
I love that because you went from 0 to 100. You
Right.
made a lot of deposits into the old Credibility Bank, the Trust Bank. And then when you made the ask, you volunteered the email like it was nothing.
Right. It
Yeah.
was very easy. And so easy, actually, that after I had done this, I was so excited. I started teaching this on the channel. I started teaching this to the people here at the office. Even my intern could do it. So I told my intern, Emmanuel, who was here last year, I mentioned to him, I was like, hey, I did this thing. You should try this sometime. And I was encouraging because they all want to learn, the interns here. So what happened is he's a hand lettering artist. He has beautiful work. So people like his stuff all the time. One of the people that started liking his work was the design director at Coca-Cola.
No big deal.
No big deal. Design director at Coca-Cola. So what happened? He just used my formula. So what he started doing is he started engaging with him. It's like, hey, I saw that you like my stuff. I work over here at The Future. I'm curious, do you have any more episodes? Because this guy, he's been doing talks, but maybe he has 3 videos out there on other podcasts. And he's like, I'm curious, do you have any other videos about branding? I want to learn more from you. So he's trying to be very genuine. Like, I love what you're saying. Can I have some more? And of course, he's engaging. He's asking questions here. So then after that, after a small dialogue, right after, he goes for the add value. He does the same exact pitch that I had. I just copied and pasted it for him. It's like, here, just pitch this so you don't have to worry about the language. It's like, oh, do you ever consider being on our show and spreading your message to our community of a few 100,000 creative entrepreneurs? And so I would love that. And what did he do? Then he connected the design director, Alex Center, over to me. And then we had him on the show. And then the bonus part, Alex said, hey, Emmanuel, if I ever need a hand lettering artist, I'm going to hit you up because I love your work.
No big deal.
No big deal. So the cool thing out of all of this is he just developed a nice organic relationship because they were being social online. They were just talking and being very good human beings. And my intern, Emmanuel, he wasn't trying to make a sale. He was just trying to make a connection with another person. So I think this is really helpful for you guys who are out there who's so focused on trying to convert and put so much pressure on that. All you want to do is just have a nice connection because there's a real human being on the other side, not a robot, not a faceless company. There's a real human being there.
Yeah.
Okay. So what are the lessons? There are real human beings and they love flattery. They love talking about themselves. So the more you flatter them, the more you ask them questions, the more they're going to open up. And the more they open up, the more you're going to understand what might be valuable to them. And throughout the business bootcamp, we're actually going to go pretty deep on how you diagnose problems, how you ask very good questions so that you can find these openings. And then from there, you're going to find, are you guys aligned on values and where can you guys actually legitimately connect? And when you do, they respond. So I'm going to show you how this works beyond the DMs, right? Like, because again, I say I use this everywhere.
Yeah.
And I do this in real life too. And Ben and I have done this when we go to events. So if we're going to some kind of conventions, for instance, like we go to Adobe Max, 99U, all of these creative,
National,
any places where our peoples are going to be, because that's our niche right now.
Right.
So here's how a general conversation might go. There are all these companies there with booths. For us at The Future, we want to do business with other software and hardware companies in the creative space. So Adobe, Cintiq, Wacom, all of these software providers now that are challengers to Adobe, like we want to work with them all because we want to get entrenched in this space.
Yeah. And just in case you guys have never been to a convention like this, typically you walk into this giant open room. It's usually like as big as a gym or even like bigger. I mean, it's a huge space. And literally there's all these temporary tables set up with enclosures. And the reason why these companies come to this is to get exposed to the audience that's there. So they're there to market.
Right. So they're already primed to talk to people. They want to expose their wares. So usually Ben and I will walk up to a booth like, dude, this is such a cool booth. Tell us about it. What is this software product about? So you just let the marketing person there start talking about it. Oh, wow. How is the audience here responding to your setup here? And this is an important question. You could do something like this because you're trying to see, do they value the audience here? Are they getting the response that they were hoping for because they invested in their time and energy in this event? So are the people here the right type of people you want to be talking to?
And honestly, we did this at Adobe Max. No,
AIGA.
AIGA. And the guys were like, oh, it's been kind of dead. Like, oh my gosh, tell us more. We were really engaged. We wanted
Just
to
asking
understand.
questions. Our follow-up was, well, what kind of people are you trying to connect with? If it's not the people here, who is that? Where do they exist? So now we're just getting into the marketer's mind. We're just asking them questions, and they're telling us everything. It's all gold right here. Ben and I were just like, check, check, check. Well, okay, now I know how I'm going to be able to talk to this person. Because now you could add value. So you can say, well, what would be more effective to reach more of your prospects? And what else are you doing? What other efforts? If this event, not this event, like, are you online? What are the campaigns are you running? How are you trying to connect with them? So now we're trying to add and demonstrate value. We're trying to show that we understand and we actually care about the success of their marketing efforts. We understand what it means to get a return on investment, right? So this is how we're demonstrating value, because we're diagnosing the problem here. And this is where you could add your little insight. If you're very deep on a particular niche, you can say, you know, I work a lot in the creative space, and I found this to be very effective to connect with designers.
Providing value right there.
Right. It's like, oh, you know, I found out you have to do some crazy stunt or have these crazy colorful giveaways with your brand logo on there. People will take that left and right because they just love it as a collectible, right? So you might drop an insight here or talk about another experience because you guys are already connected on a certain level here. You're demonstrating your expertise and adding value to the
discussion hand. But honestly, guys, if you just go into the situation with, oh man, how can I be helpful and establish something meaningful with you? It just flows naturally.
Yeah. Just ask questions. Ask questions, and you don't have to be pressured to do any of the talking. The other person's going to do the talking. They're going to give you all the answers. And then once you're ready, once you've connected on a level and you understand what's important to them, this is where you can make the ask. But when you make the ask, you want to make it small. You're not asking for the sale. You're not saying like, oh, by the way, I can make these logos for you. You don't want to do that. Again, chill out, relax, and all you want to do is establish a connection. You know, if you ever need help with this stuff, I'd love to connect and maybe chat some more after the event. I know you're super busy, and just walk away. And then we usually exchange emails there. We exchange cards, something like that. And then after the event, you just follow up a few days later. Hey, remember at the event, we spoke about this thing, and you could be super specific here because you had a deep conversation, right? So you could reference, hey, remember we spoke about printing out those special collectibles for designers so you could reach them at the event? Oh, by the way, I found this article that explains this. Or I wrote this blog article that explains the phenomenon of this, or why people like to collect free stuff at events, right?
And this is really kind of escalating the relationship. I had a lead once where we talked on the phone, and then we went out to lunch, and then we literally bought each other books. Like we went on Amazon and ordered each other, you know, like picked out books for each other and then sent it to our office address. And every step of the way, it kind of escalated to the point where I won a $40,000 job from them. So this is providing value and kind of escalating that relationship is huge.
Yeah. So you just keep adding, you keep nurturing. You just want to be a good human being, right? You want to develop a connection, a relationship with people. So now I'm going to move into email. I'm going to go a little bit faster here because we do have more information to go through. Hopefully we could always go back to this if needed, but I will just show you the same concepts apply. The only difference is if you're trying to make a pitch via email, you want to be a little bit more succinct. You want to make it very easy for the person to follow through on the information that you're providing them so that they can make a decision or refer you one way or the other. And the last bit, you want to personalize it. The thing is, because you're not having these face-to-face or DM conversations, you have to do a little bit of research on this person to figure out what they might care about, what they might be involved in, and personalize it. So I'll give a couple of quick examples. In 2014, I had finished directing a music video for Coldplay. It was this groundbreaking interactive music video, and I wanted to be featured in as many publications as possible. I want to build a PR machine because I didn't want to pay for a PR company to do this. It's like, I could do this myself. So what did I do? I started looking up magazines, specifically Fast Company. I was like, oh, Fast Company would be perfect to be in. So what did I do? I went to the Fast Company website. I started reading the articles in technology and music, and I looked up every single editor or writer of those articles. I found a couple and I pitched them.
Mm-hmm.
I said, hey, I did this thing, name drop Coldplay. I would love to give you the exclusive to run this story. I wrote it all for you. You could click this link and look at all the images. And I would like to give you the exclusive because you know what? I know you write in the music scene and the tech scene, and I saw your article on this. Mm. So I'm trying to personalize it. I'm trying to add value, and I'm trying to make it really, really easy for them to do what they need. So I basically wrote the article for them.
Right.
Makes sense? Okay, so the next thing, you know what, I'm gonna skip this one. Here is a good one. So like I said, I always get emails on my end. So this is on the receiving end. And I get a few a week of people trying to send me their stuff so that we could feature it on the channel. And I ignore most of them because normally they say something like this. I'm a fan of the channel, love your stuff. I'd love you to try my LED lamp and feature it and do a review on your channel. Thank you. And it's so stiff, like nothing about me, nothing personalized. I have no idea what I'm going to do with this. And they spent no time looking for something that is important to me. This one was super personalized. This was such a great email. So this company, Orbit Key, they make these little key organizers. They said, I saw your video about organizing your backpack, and I see that you really like to keep things like nice and tidy, basically. And I noticed you don't use a key organizer in the video. So that means they watch the whole video.
Yeah.
And we make this key organizer so you can keep stuff clutter-free, and you could use it in your gridded organizer. So I was like, oh my gosh,
specific.
Very, very specific. This person really researched me. And they said, you know, we'd love to send you some product. You can just click through our catalog and tell us what you want. And it's like, feel free to follow up with me. They made it super easy, highly personalized. This was one of the few that I actually responded to. So it's like a well-crafted email can really penetrate. And if you do it right, it feels like, wow, this is the friendliest person in the world. They know me. And I feel flattered because they spent time to look at my stuff.
Yep.
Because time is the only thing that you cannot replicate. You cannot automate. Time is the finite resources that we all have, and it's the most precious thing that we have.
Right.
Right. So when you guys are sending out emails, if you don't get a response, just follow up. If you get a no, ask for a recommend. Don't end there, and then go try someone else.
Yep.
And again, that formula is just this. You can screenshot this, or we'll provide it after. Be genuine, be curious, add value, and go for the ask. So when you're being genuine, just look for a genuine compliment. You could practice this in real life. Like I do this all the time, very, very specifically to train my brain to this. Every time I order a coffee, I look the barista up and down. I look for one thing to compliment them on. It's like, I love your tattoo. Where did you get that from? Or what does that mean? And I'm just looking for something specific to connect with them.
Yeah. You know, early on in my mentoring with Chris, when Chris first started mentoring me, I was a mess. And I was so shy and just introverted, and I just didn't want to get out there. And he told me, so your homework is to go talk to 10 people every single day. And thinking about that, it's like, you know, 10 people, it's not a lot. I mean, you see 10 people walking into your apartment building.
Right.
But when you actually put forth the effort
and
actually go try to talk to people, it is tough. It's tough to actually connect. And the easiest way that I found to connect with people is to give them a compliment.
Yeah, and smile at the same time. It goes very, very far. You could see somebody change. Like the barista, if they're really busy, like they have a kind of like a dull face. And as soon as you say, I love your glasses, those are so great, they complement the shape of your face.
Yep.
All of a sudden they light up and they're like, oh, and then they make your latte extra good and they give you a little cookie on the side. It's like, oh, thank you so much. You have a great day, right? And then with that, you just be curious. Like once you find an intro, just ask them a question. Next time you see somebody, ask them a question. Oh, I love those shoes. Where did you get them from? I find some of my friends that are really good connectors, like Shima, I went to parties with her, and she's so good. Like every person she met, she complimented something and asked them a question. I was like, ooh, she's good at this.
And honestly, guys, sometimes it can be hard to remember, right? Asking questions is something that I personally have had to like really train my brain to actually be interested in the other person. But it's huge. It is a massive tip.
Right. Then again, add value. What potential value can you offer them? So this might take a while to think about, but you could offer them insights on the niche that you both are in. You could send them resources or articles or recommend them to other people. Sometimes you might recommend to work with somebody else that's not you, and that's okay. The thing is, you're providing value to that person. It's like, oh, I know Charles down the street. He builds great websites. You should connect with him.
Yep.
I'm just making the connection. So be generous. Give more than you get. And then lastly, make the ask, but keep it small. Just focus on trying to have a conversation, not a sale.
Yeah.
Okay.
So honestly, guys, like here we are. We've just covered relationship building, and you'll notice that all of this really suspiciously looks like cold calling.
Right.
And we didn't want to call it that because the whole purpose of this is not to be cold, to not start cold. It's to get people warmed up. And so by using these fundamentals, regardless of what tactic you decide to pursue, keep these fundamentals in mind. They're just massive moving forward. Okay, let's get into some tactics. So we have 4 specific tactics for you guys. We'll go through every single one and then just kind of open it up for questions. Again, these are very, very tactical. It's kind of like a step 1, 2, 3. So let's just dive into the first one. Phone a friend. What are we talking about here?
What does that mean?
Referrals.
Okay.
We all know them. We all love them. We all have profited from them.
Right.
But they have some significant downsides. They're inconsistent. We don't really have control over them. And sometimes they net us clients that we don't really want.
Right.
So puts us in some awkward situations. And I think the misconception is like, if you're working with clients, our whole purpose is to help them like meet their goals, right? We want to help them achieve that next milestone. And we think by putting it all out there and putting our blood, sweat, and tears into something, and as soon as we help them hit that milestone, they're going to stand on that mountain and just shout to all their friends how we help them. And then immediately all their friends are going to, hire us, and we'll be living the good life.
Right.
But the reality is that, they achieve that goal, they get to the top, and then they have a new challenge to face. And it's not that they're not being grateful. It's not that they're not like thinking of you. They just don't make that connection unless your client is one of those natural born connectors, that really place value in that. And so really what we have to do is, if we want referrals, we need to ask for them.
Absolutely.
That is so key here. And in order for us to ask for them in the right way, we need to make sure that we're not sounding like a sales predator. That comes from Cal Harrison. It's great. Thank you. So
don't be creepy.
So how do we do this? How do we walk that fine line? And I'd be curious if you guys go ahead and put it in the chat. Have you ever asked for a referral from your clients before? Yes or no? I'd love to see the answers before we get into this.
Yeah, I know referrals have been huge for me personally over the years. And it's because somebody puts their name on the line for you. Yeah. But at the same time, it results out of great customer service, right? Like great experiences. And sometimes it's like, I have a great dentist, but I'm not going to go shouting on the hills like, I have a great dentist.
Right? Everybody's got a toilet. And so hopefully everybody's got a plumber, at least knows of one.
Right.
And how often have you recommended your plumber out to somebody?
Right.
And even worse, like how often have you had somebody run up to you and like, I found a great plumber.
Right. Unless they ask you. Unless they ask you to do it. Like I would appreciate a review or testimonial on Yelp. It helps my business a lot. And I always do it, especially if they're good to me.
Right. So we got a couple of only a few times and no. And I got to be honest, guys, in my history, I only started doing it probably in the last 2 years. And I want to walk you guys through my process of actually doing this. So step 1, this is a given, but you have to do great work. The client has to receive value because this is, with referrals, we're tapping into reciprocity. So should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. Right. Do great work.
This is the most obvious one.
All right. So it's helpful to check in for feedback every once in a while.
While you're working with the
client.
While
you're working, as the project, moves through its, the course of its life, give a call to your client every once and again and just check in and just say, hey, wanted to know what's your feedback? How are we doing? And what you're looking for is the high point of the project.
Mm-hmm.
So it serves multiple purposes. Number one, the feedback is going to help you avoid roadblocks and avoid disasters.
Right.
But you're also looking for the high point in the project because that's when you ask for a referral.
Right. For a lot of times for us, whenever we do discovery or the strategy session, that's probably the highest point where the client has so much clarity. They're so engaged. That's the moment where we come in. It's like, if we could help people like you, clients like you, let us know, right? If there are other people that you can think of just like you, we'd love to help them and do the same thing for them.
Yep.
So you're just waiting for that high point.
Yeah, and sometimes it's on delivery. You know, I've had some clients, like the way that we deliver projects, which we'll cover in Business Bootcamp, the way that we deliver projects is really easy. It's delightful for our clients. And sometimes that's the moment where you can make the ask. But regardless of when that happens, the next step is to make the ask. Now, there are tons of different ways to do this, but honestly, the best is on the phone or in person.
Yeah.
And I think it's because you can show a level of like openness or transparency or dare I say it, vulnerability.
Right.
But tone has a lot to do with this, but email works too. Email works too. So what we need to do is we need to be gentle. We need to be kind and open because this is a big ask. We're asking for somebody to open their network at their risk.
Right.
Because we're risking, you know, she's risking her name by recommending us. So we need to be gentle. We need to be kind and open. Here's the key. We also want to avoid the yes or no question. We don't want to ask them, hey, do you know of anybody who could use my services? Or do you know anybody who I could help? That's a very clear like yes or no. And it's really easy for that person to say, oh, no, not right now, but you know, I'll keep you guys in mind.
And I do that all the time. So I'm not good at that. So what's a better way, Ben?
So this comes straight from Blair Enns. Who else do you know that I might be able to help?
Oh, so it's more open-ended.
It's more open-ended. And immediately when you hear this, you start thinking about your network, even if you haven't made the decision to make the referral.
Right.
So that's key. Who else do you know that I might be able to help?
I love that.
So let's wrap this in an email, just for you guys who conduct most of your business over email.
This is a Kodak moment here. So if you guys want a screenshot, feel free to do it. This is a good template.
So this template it's cobbled together from a whole bunch of places, but you'll see the question. And it says, I'm so glad to hear you're happy with the results of working with us so far. I knew we could help, and I'm pleased that you're seeing results so quickly. Since things are going so well, I found myself wondering if you have any colleagues at similar companies who would benefit from our whatever you do. Here's the question. Who else do you know that we could help? I would love to help them achieve similar growth.
I like
it's huge.
So direct.
Here's the thing. There's an even better way to ask. I think you should do both. But sometimes you kind of want to change course, reposition, or target somebody specific on LinkedIn. And sometimes, you know, if you're doing a little detective work, if you're doing a little digging, and you see that your client or somebody that you know is connected with one of your desired companies, we want to be able to ask for, you know, that connection specifically.
Oh, yeah. I've done that for sure.
Yeah. So this is a great template. It's another Kodak moment. It says, quick favor to ask. I'd like to add a very specific kind of client to our agency this year. And I know the best way to do that is through existing friends. I look to you for ultimate guidance on this. So there's your flattery.
Right.
If you'd be open to it, I'd love to demonstrate our impact too, and then drop the person's name in the email. So you're being very, very specific. It continues. Specifically, I think they would find value in a conversation about, and then insert the topic here. Given our experience together, I'd hoped that you'd be open to an introduction to this person this week.
Right.
That is such a massive email. I mean, just if you guys can nail this, it's going to be great.
This is powerful.
Specific helps.
And I've done this before, actually, where my brother's girlfriend was a game tester at Konami. It's a video game company. And at the time, I was doing a lot of video game work or wanted to get more into that niche. This was back in 2013. So I reached out to her and said, do you know anybody in the branding or marketing department that you can connect me with? She connected me to somebody who works on the internal videos there. And I said, hey, this is the kind of products we offer. We do motion graphics for
Mm-hmm.
video and marketing. I was hoping that I could talk to the right person. And then I realized, I checked on LinkedIn that he had a higher up, like the VP of marketing over there.
Oh.
So then I tagged him specifically. I was hoping you could refer me, Charles, to Ron over at Konami, because I think we could really help you guys on some of the projects that you're working on. And through about 3 degrees of separation, the following week I had a sit-down meeting with the VP of marketing over at Konami.
Wow.
So it works, and you could leverage your network here, and you just have to do a little digging, and you can be very specific about what you need and what you want out of that.
Yep. I love it when you're doing some LinkedIn digging. I like LinkedIn for digging and researching.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
But I loved seeing that like second or third degree of separation, because I know somebody that knows somebody who knows somebody.
Right.
And this is a perfect kind of email for that.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say you get a yes. Let's
Mm-hmm.
say the person that you ask is like, absolutely, I would love to recommend.
Mm-hmm.
Here's some tips. Make sure that you're making it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them how they would prefer to make their referral.
Mm.
So sometimes people will want to like do it, away from you and kind of recommend that this person, reach out to you directly.
Right.
Sometimes they would want to do a call together. You never know, but ask them how they want to make the
Right.
referral. Next up, this comes from Chris's article about how to find new clients. Offer to contact the new lead directly.
Right.
It's like, hey, I see you're connected to XYZ. Can I contact her on your behalf?
Right.
Or,
can I say that we're connected?
That we're connected.
Somehow?
Yeah. And then the next is, you can always provide an email template to them.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done this a couple of times, especially for testimonials and reviews. I just wrote the testimonial for the client.
Right.
And just said, hey, feel free to chop this up or throw it away completely if you want to write something different. I'm just trying to make it easy on you.
Right.
So make it easy.
Right. You say, I know this is a big ask and I don't want to take up too much of your time.
Yep.
So that's why I'm making it easy for you here.
Exactly. And then make sure you're following up. This, again, should go without saying, but if you forget to thank someone that gave you a referral, especially one that wound up ending up in a job, that's the best way to never get a referral ever again.
Right.
So make sure that you're thanking them.
Do something nice for them. Send them and get them a gift card somewhere.
Yep.
Send them a nice fruit basket. Something. Just say thank you at least.
Yeah. All right, guys, just to sum this up, referrals, the quickest way to get new work, but you have to ask for them. They're not going to come organically or rarely, I should say.
Mm-hmm. So Samuel has a question about referral fees. Anywhere from like 5 to 20%. It just really depends. Like we could get very specific there. It just really depends, because if that person has a connection to $1 million job and the jobs you're doing right now are $10,000, they probably deserve a way bigger cut. So I think it's scalable. It just matters like how much they're bringing to the table for you.
Yeah. And honestly, to be honest, I have kind of a different view of it.
Mm-hmm.
I see paid referrals as a little bit less genuine.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to navigate around that if you're gonna pay people to, kind of an affiliate fee or finder's fee or something like that.
Right.
So I would recommend trying to steer away from that versus sending them a big check.
And I've done both.
Yeah.
I've done both. Most of the time I'm pretty generous, only because I don't want to be involved in the conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Like, here, Frank, meet Ben, and you guys hash it out.
Yeah.
Right. Other times, if I know I have to do a little bit of legwork, meaning I have to set this up, I have to do a call, then I'm going to charge a referral fee, because I know it's going to take some of my time, but I'm happy to set that up. And that's when I'm going to charge some kind of referral fee that makes sense for me, makes sense for my time in this whole situation.
I get it. Okay. Move on to the next one, number 2.
Yes.
Okay. 204, partner in crime. Okay. So I'm sure as you guys were putting together your lists, one of these things kind of bubbled up to the top, one of these objections, and probably was something like this. Okay, now I know who my target customers are. How the heck do I reach them?
Mm-hmm.
And having access to these people and these companies is a significant, it's a limiting factor.
Mm-hmm.
However, the good news is that somebody has access. Somebody has the access that you need. So the partner in crime tactic is all about finding and collaborating with other service providers. And to further specify, these are people that, work with your target audience or clients like your target audience, but don't exactly do what you do. They do something different. All right, so I want to kind of illustrate this with a story. I want you guys to meet Frank. So this is Frank Shi. For those of you who have been watching our content for a long time, he's been on the show several times. And I've known him for 5 years now.
He was an intern here. I know last week I shared a story about Benjamin, our intern, who's doing gaming work. Well, Frank was also part of the same batch of interns.
Oh,
I think we had an entrepreneurial bunch. Yeah.
Everybody has interned at Blind.
Yeah, I was an intern at Blind too. So
Frank and I met in the Pro Group, which is a future product, and this was 4 or 5 years ago. It's been a while, and we kind of came up together. We were growing a company at the same time. We had the same struggles with clients, and we became friends. And I knew that Frank wasn't really a competitor because he was more focused on 3D and
product
AR,
right?
Yeah, product viz, VR, stuff like that. Whereas I was more focused on branding and digital design and development. So it was kind of interesting, and I almost discounted the relationship because I knew I couldn't delegate any of my work directly. Like I couldn't ask Frank to build a website for me.
Right.
But we stayed in touch, and he kept forwarding me projects that he had done, and we would jump on calls every once in a while and just kind of catch up. We established a friendship. Well, it turns out that I actually onboarded a client that had a new product. It was kind of like a alternative vehicle, and the product was so cutting edge. It was so new that it wasn't even made yet. And so this guy had no visuals, and I was tasked with creating a website. And for you guys in the industry, you know that creating a website with no images is...
What do you put on there? You need the content.
You're like trying to walk without one leg.
Right.
And so, immediately I thought of Frank because I knew, and even in those days, I didn't even know the breadth of what Frank did, but I knew that he could mock up a product in 3D and make it so that the customers would actually like seeing those images. So instead of hiring Frank on the project, I introduced Frank to my client, and they established a relationship. And this client would have never reached out to Frank. I mean, we were on the opposite sides of the country. There was a lot of distance. So Frank would have never had access to this guy. Well, the guy hired him, Frank got the job, and it was a 5-figure job. Right. So there's a respectable amount of money that Frank got through connections.
Right, through you.
Yep.
So you were his partner in crime here.
Exactly.
And
so
you provided him entryway to this client.
Yep, exactly. So how can you guys do this? Well, first, we need to find them. And there's tons of different ways to find partners in crimes. Past projects, that's a big one, right?
Yeah, past projects. Like I mentioned earlier, I directed an interactive music video for Coldplay. The story behind that is I pitched Coldplay because I got this fantastic opportunity. I'm going to make an interactive music video for you guys. Thing is, I didn't know how to make it. I didn't have the technology background to do it, but they said, yes, let's do it. We're so excited. And as soon as they said that, I had to turn around. I was like, fudge, how do I make this thing? So what I started doing is I started researching Flurry online, anything that resembled some kind of interactive video experience. I found maybe like 20 different projects, and I was digging into the credits list, like who was responsible for this? Who was the dev team? Who was the technology team? Eventually, I found one person, and I think it was for one of the Bob Dylan like interactive music videos, and they were called Treehouse at the time.
Oh.
I reached out to them, and a week later, I had a partner to complete this video. Completely cold. I've never heard of them before, never met them before. I just saw that they've done work, and I just looked up past projects to find the right partner.
And so reaching out to them, it was a great connection point. It's like, hey, you worked on this, I worked on this.
Let's do something together for a Coldplay, because this is going to be great for both of us.
Right.
And it worked out.
Awesome. Okay, so the next one, business groups. Welcome. You guys are here.
You guys are in a business group.
There are 49 of you here, and many of you do very different things. There are videographers in the mix. There are web people. There's apparently somebody who's an expert in blockchain. Welcome.
Right.
But you guys can network and actually go in on projects together. So that's one of the most powerful things. Pro Group is the same way. Okay. Social media groups. This one is huge. There are so many LinkedIn and Facebook groups for developers and photographers and designers. And it doesn't matter what your craft is. There is at least 10 Facebook groups or social media groups that you could join and just kind of like join the conversation.
Brandon says Slack channels.
Yeah, exactly.
There's tons of Slack channels.
Discords. Yep. And the amazing thing is that as soon as you go into these groups, you see people complaining that they can't find other people. So let's say I joined a developers group the other day on Facebook as a React group. I'm sitting there in the thing, and they're complaining about finding good designers. That they have jobs, they have the budgets, but they can't find designers to work with that don't disappear on them. And I'm like, I know 500,000 people over here that are like, we're here.
Right. Connect us, give us a job.
So it's really amazing if you just go where they are. Okay, next is co-working spaces. This is huge for me in my beginning years. Is I grabbed a table at a co-working space, and all of a sudden I had exposure to about 100 other people who were same boat. They were kind of solopreneurs working up from the ground, and everybody did something different. I was able to network there. All right, next up, public meetups. Again, it's the same thing as social media groups, except it's in person. There's tons of React groups, different developer language meetups here in LA that I've been to. And you walk into these meetups, and all of a sudden you're surrounded by 60 people who are there to discuss their craft.
Yeah, and you could be actually the Trojan horse here, or the unique unicorn in the group. So for instance, we host a lot of events here at The Futur, which we're mostly video-based content creators. Every so often, a composer or somebody that makes music comes to this thing, and they make 20, 30 connections with people that they didn't have because they're the only ones making music. And they're like, hey, do you guys want to collaborate? I know you need music for your videos. I'd love to let you use my library. And then boom, they have a connection.
Same thing in the pro group. I mean, we had our first web developer join the other day, and he is swarmed with the requests.
That's awesome.
And then the last tactic, to find these partners in crime, start with the work that you love. If you're into the outdoor kind of athletics, take a look at Patagonia and look for a campaign that you really enjoy, and then see if you can figure out who worked on that campaign. That's a great way to reverse engineer who's already working in the industry that you want to break into. All right, next up, connect with them. We've already been through this. Matthew kind of covered this in depth, but social comment, sharing their work, sending them DMs, sending them an email, and then trying to get an in-person introduction. It's all gravy if you just follow that formula that we talked about before. And just to kind of summarize, this tactic is all about finding and collaborating with other service providers. And something that you guys have to remember throughout this, and we're going to keep harping on this, is your goal is to expand your network and create real relationships. You really want to build friendships with the people that you're going to work with.
Right. You don't want to build a bunch of relationships. You want to build meaningful relationships.
Yeah.
So that when you call on each other, that there's a connection there, and you guys have trust, you have rapport, and people are willing to put their own name and reputation on the line for you.
Yep, exactly. Cool. All right. We're halfway through the tactics, guys. The next one is the big fish. So another gap that we've identified is it's hard for clients to find somebody that's kind of new to the space, especially if you're a small fish in a big pond, right? Luckily, other agencies don't have that problem. Other agencies may be bigger, they're more well-known, they have an established track record, and even if they don't specialize, they might have worked in the industry that you want to break into. And you can use it to your advantage. Right. And there's really two ways to look at these kind of relationships. Here's the first one. Sometimes these agencies have opportunities that are not good fit. And it can be a budgetary issue, or it can be they just don't want to work with. And anytime that happens, it happens to us. We want to make sure that we're referring these opportunities away.
Right. So in this situation, we're the agency, we're the big fish in this situation. And sometimes small clients will reach out to us where it's under our MLE, our minimum level of engagement. And luckily, we have a robust network like you guys and the Pro Group
Yep.
that we can refer this out to.
Yep, exactly. So one kind of flavor of this relationship is that you're just available for referrals from the agency of jobs that don't fit.
Right, the person that's bigger than you.
Yep. Here's the other way to go about it, and this is what Blind has done for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got a huge client like Xbox or Nike. They hire a big agency like Wieden & Kennedy or Ogilvy, and then that agency hires you to do the job.
Right. So if you develop good relationships with the agencies, and the first 18 years of our business was focused on serving ad agencies, make TV commercials for them. Thing is, we had a very specialized production methodology and focus in motion design that they simply did not have in-house or cared to want in-house.
Yep.
But they need to find specialists. So if we are working this nice relationship with these agencies, which back in the day we would do screenings, we would go visit all the different agencies and do screenings of our work, buy them lunch. Then we are top of mind. And when they have their huge opportunities from the Fortune 100 companies of the world, Nike, Coke, all these things, then we're there. It's like, oh, we need to make this campaign for them. I know the perfect service provider for that.
Right, exactly. So the whole point of this is we need to get in line. So we're going to position ourselves in the food chain with these bigger providers. Now, we want you guys to move up in the food chain, right? We want you guys to be those big companies that the massive brands come to directly. There's no shame in taking a $250,000 project from a bigger agency.
Right.
No shame whatsoever.
That sounds pretty good, actually.
And the cool thing is that Matthew and I have been on both sides of this. In the early days, this was the first agency that I reached out to. It's a company called My Agency in Savannah. And initially, I just reached out as kind of like, hey, look, if you got any jobs that don't fit, I'd be happy to take them. I'm here. It was very kind of like a humble request. And so they started referring jobs our way. And then eventually, the work that we were doing for those clients got back to them. And my agency was like, hey, Ben, I hear that you're really good at brand strategy. Would you like to help us out with some of the clients that we have? And eventually, our relationship got so strong that they put us on the homepage of their website. So there's my company right there.
The
little blue one.
Awesome.
I got to tell them to update this homepage.
That business doesn't exist anymore, right?
So I made a lot of money working with people that they couldn't work with and working with their clients. That was a really good relationship. And they weren't much bigger. They were only 20 people, but compared to my 2 and 3 at that point, it was a fantastic relationship. And then obviously, working with Blind, I've been on the other side of that coin. Just last week, we handed out a $100,000 job and a $40,000 job to the Pro Group. And these are just leads that come up that don't really fit what we want to do, or they're not big enough to hit our MLE.
Yep.
So how can you guys do this? Get into the tactical stuff. First, you got to find them. And this sounds easy, but when you start looking into it, it's a little bit difficult. And it's difficult to figure out who's actually a big agency sometimes. I remember doing this in Richmond. And in Richmond, Virginia, there was something crazy like 169 creative agencies in that small area. So I would recommend starting local. Just take a look at your local area and figure out who the big dogs in your space are. Look at those local searches.
People like working with local folks because they could just hop down the street and meet face to face.
Yeah, exactly. You can take them out to lunch. You can buy them a beer. It can be a really kind of low pressure situation. If you're in a location that's like really remote, or maybe it's tapped out and you feel like you don't want to work locally, I would recommend looking into small to mid-sized cities. And we're not talking about Los Angeles or New York. We're not talking about San Francisco or reaching out to like, Ogilvy or anything like that. Look for those like small to mid-sized cities like Milwaukee or Richmond or Charlotte, because those cities have a bunch of really respectable agencies that are maybe 50 people that could use your work. And the key there is that they're not in an area that they have access to talent.
Right.
You go to Los Angeles, you go to New York, and there's so many options. There's the well is very deep with talent for these agencies to tap into, but some of the other cities won't have that. Next up, LinkedIn digging. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right?
Once you
Find companies on LinkedIn.
right, once you find a well, then you just keep digging.
Yep,
You just
exactly.
keep digging there and pull out as much as you can.
Exactly.
It's easy.
Another site is Agency Spotter. I actually used Agency Spotter back in my day. I got my company listed on there. I think Redbooks is another one.
Mm-hmm.
But these are lists of agencies that the Fortune 500 tap into. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a good resource to use. And then next is just like clientele that you want. So it's really easy to say, hey, I want to break into outdoor action sports. Let me look up Patagonia. Who is Patagonia's agency? Okay,
Right.
great. Patagonia's agency is X.
Mm-hmm.
Who works with them? Who does the production? And then you can continue down the chain that way.
Right.
So it's a great way to kind of tap into the field that you want. All right, next, connect with them. So all of these things still apply from what Matthew went through. You can send them an email. You can go to industry events like AIGA is a great opportunity, NAB,
right.
Anywhere where these professionals go.
Mm-hmm.
You can also go to their own events,
right.
which is really fantastic. I attended an event at the Martin Agency that was just kind of like a cocktail hour for
mm-hmm.
creative professionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I met a whole bunch of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
This is my favorite. Do something memorable. Send donuts.
Ben likes donuts. There's half of the people here are a little bit more carb conscious and are just like, I don't think I could fit that into my macros today. But doing something memorable is the thing that's going to break through. So I'll give you two examples of people who did something very memorable for us. One guy, his name was Oscar Marr. He's a motion designer, and he wanted to make a connection to Chris and I.
Yep.
What he did is he produced a set of 100 unique candles that he had like hand carved, that had all these crazy ornate things out of this wood carved case. And when you open it, there's this nice candle inside and his card in there. And he shipped that to us.
Wow.
And it's so memorable. The fact that he did that was 2 years ago. And last week I had a beer with him. Like he was here and I had a beer with him. That's the thing. It's like I remembered him because of that thing. Yeah. And he's DMing me all the time. It's like, hey, remember I sent you that candle? It's like, oh, I know exactly who you are.
And guys, it doesn't have to be big. Like donuts, I'm telling you. The IT company sent donuts last week and I still have their card on my desk. Seriously.
That was very powerful, right? People got very jazzed about that. Another memorable thing, people email us for portfolio reviews all the time. The thing is, we don't have time for the amount of emails that come in. So one guy, what he had done is he made a custom created cologne for Chris. He showed up to the office and said, I need to hand deliver this to Chris. And then Chris walked up to the front and he gave it to him. It's like, Chris, I made this for you. And I was hoping that I could just get 15 minutes of your time and maybe you can review my work. Chris sat down with him almost like an hour.
Wow.
So those are things that are so unique because people are so lazy that they just want to go the digital option first and spam out, where things like this, doing something memorable, something unique, these are the things that are going to make you stand out.
Yep. Awesome. All right. I have a couple of tips just for emailing because I have a lot of experience with this specific strategy. First, you want to find the new business people. New business people, typically they'll have new business in their title. So new business director. Sometimes they're the account executive. You're basically looking for the contact who does sales because this is the person who is going to turn away work, especially if you're looking for those referrals. So find those guys and gals. Make sure that when you reach out, you're communicating what your specialty is. So that way they know when is the appropriate time to refer jobs to you. And then also make it worth their while. So one tip is, I have never offered media buying as a service, but big agencies do. And so sometimes it kind of helps to throw a line in your email that says, hey, listen, I might be getting some requests for media buying in the future, and I'd love to make a contact so that I can refer these to the right place. So give them value, make it worth their while. Here's a dirty trick. I'm gonna confess to this one, Matthew. CC somebody in charge. So I had been emailing the Martin Agency's new business department for a while, just trying to get on their referral list because they had a database of companies that they could refer people to. I just wanted to get on that list, but I couldn't get anybody to respond to me. what I did was I did some digging using a couple of Chrome extensions that we can talk about later. And I found the executive creative director's email address, Joe Alexander. And so what I did was I CC'd Joe on the email to the new business lead. Again, I didn't hear anything back from the new business guy. And then a couple days later, I get an email from Joe Alexander who said, "Hey guys, this is a Richmond local. This is in our backyard. Can you respond?" And then immediately I got a flurry of emails. "You're on the list. You're number one." All this kind of stuff. So seeing somebody in charge sometimes can help.
It's a little dirty. A little dirty.
A little dirty. So again, guys, your goal is to expand your network and create those real relationships. If you can get in good with a new business guy at an agency, it can be very, very profitable for everybody involved. And remember the big fish. Your goal is to just get in line, like position yourself in that food chain with the bigger providers.
Mm-hmm. And we're almost done with the tactics here. I just wanted to bring up two quick questions.
Yeah.
Noella is asking, can you value-based price in this situation where you're talking to the agencies? No, not really.
No.
Because the agency has already done that to the client.
Yeah.
So to the big client, they say, what is this worth to you, blah, blah, blah. And then they already have figured out the budgets they're going to spend. We're going to cover this in the boot camp. Well, how are you going to get the maximum amount of budget for that type of situation?
Yep.
The second question is from Samuel. He asks, well, how does this work in terms of how you put it on your site? Well, if you look at our website, if you go to blind.com, you'll see that all the Xbox projects I've done, it says client is Xbox. Mm-hmm. The agency is Eisenberg. And I list all of the agency credits there. Then I list our credits after. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're crediting what your role is in the entire thing, I don't think there's anything that's big of a deal unless it's stipulated in your contract.
And we put that in our contracts to make sure that we can show the work.
Right. As a marketing tool for us to get more work.
Yep.
Cool.
Questions? All right, next one. This one's going to be quick because we've kind of already covered it, but it's the judo flip.
What is judo flip?
The judo flip. Come on, clicker. Here's the basics. We're going to use your target's marketing against them. Just like in judo, we're using our opponent's energy against them. We're going to be using the target's marketing against them. And really, this boils down to we want to market to the marketers.
Right. So we talked about this earlier when we go to events. This is how you do the judo flip, and we'll get into some examples. How do you do that?
Yeah. So really, it's just about being a curious customer. Buy what they sell, sign up for their newsletters, follow their social media, go where they are, visit their booths, do things to where you are engaged in their ecosystem. And then it's really simple. You just reach out and ask the right questions.
Right.
So I'll tell you, you guys know that Blind has been working in the commercial real estate space for a few years now. I think it's 4 years. And it's been a very, very profitable niche for us.
Right.
The first client that we got was using this strategy. See, Chris is, he purchased this building a while ago, and he used a real estate brokerage. And so he would receive these email newsletters from his realtor from time to time. He said they were beautifully designed. They're beautifully, they're well written. And he would get these from time to time. And all of a sudden he was like, you know what? I'm going to try and market to these guys. So all he did was he hit reply and he asked, hey guys, just curious, how is this working out for you? Because the emails look great. They're beautiful. How is this working for you?
How is it performing?
Yeah. And just by asking that question, they immediately responded and said, hey, we'd love to talk. And, in that kind of initial message, Chris was like, I know you guys think of us about, making commercials, right? I know you guys know us for making commercials, but we're actually making the switch into brand strategy and working in branding. So that's where the client was like, immediately, let's grab a meeting. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of our start in commercial real estate.
And what happened after? What was the result of just that one email, the judo flip, marketing to the marketers? Mm-hmm. That resulted in millions of dollars worth of work for the next 4 years for our agency. And the thing is, we didn't even plan or consider that. That was just something that Chris had tried and has been highly effective for us and has resulted in great results. Like it's been huge for us.
Yeah. So here's some questions that really work well. How's it going?
How is this going?
How is the campaign going? How is the booth? How is the audience responding? Is this working? And I think that this ties into, any salesperson when faced with this question is going to immediately fire back like, oh, I don't know. Do you have something better? Because they're always looking for that better way, that cheaper way, that more affordable way to do things. Other one, follow up. Hey, who are you trying to connect with?
Right.
It's a powerful question because we're asking for their motivation and the audience that they're after.
Right. Especially if this is a follow-up based off of the response on the first question. So if the first question is, oh, it could be better, like when we went to AIGA, then it's like, well, what's getting in the way?
Yeah.
Who do you want to connect with? So now you're starting to understand what the challenges are. And we're going to go very deep in this in the boot camp about diagnosing, right?
Yeah. And then the last one is, how else are you going about this? How else are you trying to solve this problem?
Right.
And really here, the whole point, again, it's just to establish a relationship, establish a conversation that can lead to bigger and better things.
Right. And when you ask this question, what you'll figure out is how they're spending their money. So you will understand, is it just digital? Are they just doing e-blasts?
Yeah.
Do they have billboards out there? Are they going to events? Where are they spending their money? Are they making videos? Are they making marketing videos?
Yeah.
Because then you'll get the full breadth and you might find a place to insert yourself. Or if you find a place that they're not doing, like let's say Facebook ads, then it's like, well, you know what? I serve the space.
Yeah. Have you tried this?
Right.
Great.
There you go.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we want to keep that brief because we've kind of already covered that in the events and trade show section of the first, but I just want to open it up for questions because I know that was a lot. It was an hour and a half of information. So
let's remove the share screens. And then if you guys have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat if you want to, or feel free to just come on. You can unmute yourself and then ask a good follow-up question because I know it's super dense. Hopefully you guys were tracking along. And if there's anything that was unclear, let us know so that we can dig in deeper. Or if you have a point of clarification, let us know.
Lauren says everything was gold. Awesome. Thank you.
Any questions? If there's no questions, you guys are going to make this so easy for us. Yes, we will repost this after so that you guys can go with this. You can pause through the video and take more screen grabs.
Ryan asks, do you have a message example for how to reach out to agencies to offer your services? Yes, we do actually. It's in a deleted slide somewhere in the depths of this, but what my goal is, guys, is to take each one of these strategies and then make a workbook that has all these scripts in it and different options and things like that, so you can just copy and paste them over.
Right. So maybe this is something, if you ask again in the Facebook group for the event, we could just copy and paste that there so that we don't have to go digging on for it live here.
Yep.
Let's see. Feel free to come on. I'd love to hear your voices.
Yeah, you guys don't have to type because we can definitely hear you. You're making it really awkward, guys. No.
All I can see is silence.
Oh,
there we go. Ladies first. She popped on first.
All right, great. So about the section when you were discussing DMs, I noticed that you were doing it with your personal account. And I was wondering what kind of room is there for a business social media account if you're using your personal account to DM?
I'll let you weigh in.
The thing is, so the future account is a faceless account, meaning there's nobody's portrait there, and people DM us all the time, and we DM other brands back, and we use the leverage of our audience there, and we just have personal conversations. And usually when we do this, we sign our name at the bottom. And if you ever message our Facebook page, it's the same thing. You will get a response, and it will say -Elise. If you're responding to somebody on our Instagram, it will say -L.
Yeah.
So you could still have a personality there through your brand. And it's just also the way that you speak and carry yourself. It doesn't have to be so stiff and professional. You can still be a real person, and you can introduce yourself right away. You could say, I'm Danielle. I work at this branding company, and I was just curious if, and there you're already a warm, real human being on the other side. So there's that. We've also found that it's just very helpful if you do have your own strong personal brand as somebody that's connected to the company, because people do like seeing faces, it feels a little bit more of a easier human connection. So that is preferred, but it's not an absolute.
When I think about all the clients that have paid us a lot of money, I mean, we're talking multiple six figures, high six figures, almost seven figures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about DMing them with a company account. I don't know. It feels impersonal to me.
Right. And the way we usually get into those situations, or for drumming up business, I will just reach out to the executive creative director at an agency.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, we haven't worked together for a while. How's it going?
Yeah.
And I'm just going to strike up a conversation there. And so it's more person to person.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else has a question? I put you guys up there, so now I can see your face.
Yeah, I had a question. This is Devin here.
Hey, Devin.
Hey, Devin.
So if you get a referral from someone and it pays well, but the client is a pain to work with, you keep asking for referrals from that person?
You don't have to do anything you don't want to do. As soon as you're done, just wrap it up, man.
I would. I mean, they're not going to, all of their friends aren't jerks. You know what I mean? I think that it's very generous of somebody to make a referral on your behalf. So if they want to keep on giving, I mean, the worst you can do is just say no to the leads.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there a reason? Did that come?
I've totally been there. Yeah. I want to hear the horror story.
Yeah. I mean, the referral came from a friend who owns an agency that does more of the media buy.
Mm-hmm.
When I got started out, they hired me for more one-off small design projects.
Mm-hmm.
But they've recently started sending a bigger client my way, and it's good, but they tend to have bad clients and don't care. So they don't
I see.
to improve their client base. So if they're continuing to send that type of client, worth it to keep that relationship or just end it.
Right. So usually once you get into those sticky client situations, we do cover this in the course in terms of how to communicate clearly. So if you feel a certain way, if you feel wrong, there's ways to communicate that, you know, we're having this challenge. When this happens, I feel this way. I feel frustrated that we can't have a productive relationship moving forward. What I'd like to happen in the future is X, Y, and Z. Can we agree to something there? And so you could just communicate in a very clear way to help reorganize and restructure the kind of like the relationship between you two. And we're going to get really deep. There's a whole module on communication, but there are ways to get around the sticky situation. Doesn't mean that it's done there and that you have to sever ties. There are ways to repair it if you can communicate clearly.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. Software recommendations. I knew that was going to come up. We used HubSpot. HubSpot's great. I've heard Pipedrive is awesome too. You can also use a Notion document. Anything that's going to allow you to track the leads over time, so that you have a good idea of what your close rates are, what your qualification rates are. So that way you can tell, like, oh man, I only pulled in 3 leads this week. If I continue to see this downward trend, we're going to have to amp up this, lead generation or cold calling or something like that.
Yeah.
You just want to be able to measure.
You want to measure and you want to reflect. Because for me, I never got into the fancy tools. I just had Google Sheets. And every year I have a tab. And each project that came along, each potential client I had on there. And I said, did we win it or did we not? If we didn't, why did we lose it?
Yeah.
And then I always assign a dollar value so that every year I can go through my catalog. I could see my win rate, my personal win rate, my personal loss rate, and then try and put together some kind of insight as to why I might have lost it, so that because I'm measuring, I know where I can improve.
Right. Yeah.
Just on was there a follow-up question there?
Yeah. So it's Brad.
Hey, Brad.
Hey.
You sounded unsure, Brad.
Indeed. Yeah, it's early morning here. I just got back from soccer.
Good morning.
So basically, on your let's just say you don't get a job. Is there any, or do you guys constantly follow up, or how do you guys understand where you went wrong, why they made their decision, that type of thing, or do you do that as part of your process, or is that just something that you get feedback from sometimes and not others?
We always want to improve. We're constant improvers here. So we always reach out after the fact, especially when we lose. So we ask, I was just hoping that we could get some feedback. So in the future, we can serve clients like you better, or you could just specifically say, I'd like to serve you better. And I want to understand where we went wrong so that I could do right by you next time. And then usually they're pretty open to give a few like bullet points or a little follow-up, or even jump on a call and say, you know what, the other guys, they were just positioned a little bit better. Or, you know, the other guys, they went all out and they did all these crazy video tests for us. Or they'll give you some insight that you can understand. And then you could think about how much you improve your process in the future so that you avoid those types of things. Or you might find out that it was completely unavoidable. You could find out that the other person just undercut the project by half.
Yep.
And it doesn't even make sense. And then you learn,
Yeah.
shoot, I should have asked upfront. I should have established the budget upfront so that I didn't waste all this time on proposals.
And the crazy thing is that, like, you know, we started losing a lot of jobs in 2017. We started missing out on these opportunities, and we couldn't figure out why until we looked at like those reasons and started adding them up. And it was something crazy, like 80% of the jobs that we lost literally just disappeared. The company closed. They decided to not launch the product that they were thinking of. They decided to not launch the brand. They just moved away, and then the job disappeared. So it's not even that we lost those to a competitor. It's literally that the job went away.
Right.
So it's really, really valuable to track the reason behind the L.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm in. Hey guys, I'm Brandon from Chicago.
Brandon.
So I want to kind of go back to like one of the first slides that you guys brought up. And I initially asked the question about, which was that qualified leads equation, and you kind of broke down what qualified leads were. And one of the things that I have issues with, or not issues with, but I've just like found to be a problem, I guess, throughout the sales process is qualifying budget. And one of the things is, can they afford us, is one of the bullets. I know it's kind of like a big topic, but I'm curious from your guys' expertise and experience, what are the most effective ways to qualify budget so you don't end up wasting each other's time?
Yeah. Well, you want to do that very early on, probably on the first call, so that you waste as little time as possible.
Right.
And we have a whole module about pricing and diagnosing. Those things go together. But I'll give you guys a preview. The easiest way to have this dialogue is a couple steps. First, you want to understand, what is your goal? What is your goal for this initiative? What's currently getting in the way of that goal? Why aren't you achieving that now? Why haven't you guys reached $10 million in revenue? Why haven't you grown your audience to 500,000? So you're trying to figure out what's getting in the way.
Yep.
Then you might ask, how might we solve that? What are ways that we can address that? Either us together or just you guys as a company. Like, what are ways that you could potentially address that challenge? They might tell you 3 different ways. Then you could ask, what's that worth to you? In the one case where it's revenue, if it's sales, it's like, oh, it's worth $10 million to your company if you get this right. And the follow-up question is, what do you think is a reasonable amount to invest in that? To get $10 million, what do you think we should invest in this initiative? If you're building a marketing website, what would you say? And then you leave it open to them because they have to assign the value. This is value-based pricing, by the way. And then they might say, $20,000. Oh, $20,000. So that's 0.05% of the potential upswing that you might get from this initiative. You think that makes sense to invest in that? And then you test their logic. Usually people are willing to spend up to 10 or 20% to achieve something. That makes a lot of sense. And we're going to get into this when we talk about value-based pricing in the pricing module. But these are just ways that you can have these conversations that the clients can assign the value, the monetary value to this thing.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon, right?
Yep.
How are you qualifying your leads right now? Are you using email or phone?
Actually, typically Slack channels. So I'm in the
Okay.
web development space, and so I join like tech Slack channels for given cities. Like Chicago Tech has one, Denver has one, and then there's specific ones for different incubators. And then another one that I really found really good is for $45 a month. You can, I don't work at WeWork, but you can join their network and
Nice.
their online portal, and I can dig through their job board and find people who are actually posting and looking for development services, and I can talk to them if it fits.
That's killer. One thing I would recommend, and this is, something that I recommended to our executive producer when I started here, is always qualify on the phone. So the phone call, even if it's a 10, 15-minute phone call, it can go leaps and bounds. And it's because you can just be frank, right? You can just be open and transparent. And sometimes the value-based pricing thing is like the miracle cure, right? That painting the desired future state and then following up with, how much would you invest? That's an amazing thing. But sometimes you're working with somebody who has a budget, like a marketing director, and you don't know how much money they're bringing to the table, but you kind of know that they're not going to know the impact or that desired future state. This is my go-to. I typically go, hey, love the project, sounds really cool. Typically projects like this are anywhere between $300,000 and $100,000. Is that a range that you're comfortable working within?
Right.
And so right off the bat, you're asking, you are anchoring your price high, and then you're also saying, hey, is that a window that you're comfortable working inside of? They're either going to say yes or no, and then boom, there's your qualification.
Right.
That make sense?
Yeah. Thank you.
I've got another question. So on obviously with the 100 perfect list that we were trying to generate with startups, it makes it very hard because those startups probably aren't around yet. But it's very easy to say these are the types of startups I want to work with, or this is where I might find that work from. Specifically, I've kind of put together a list just for my own personal use from the homework, was gatekeepers, or what you call basically.
I love that.
Now, trying to look at ways to basically get a foot in the door there, I'm guessing just from today's class, would you suggest it's the same way as dealing with an agency, or is it slightly a different dynamic? Because, for instance, one that I've identified is venture capitalists. So I want my startups to have been backed by somebody so that they've got money to spend, but it also basically validates the startup to say, hey, we're serious, we know what we're doing. But I suppose venture capitalists speak a completely different language than, say, a design agency. Whether or not, how to get that foot in the door, basically.
I love the idea. The VC funds it's great. I actually worked with a VC company out of Boston, and it was right before Blind kind of acquired my company and moved out here, but they were sending us tons of leads, lower than Blind could take on, but it was just this constant source of customers. So are you asking, do we reach out to them the same way we would do an agency?
Basically, yeah. So with an agency, often they speak the same language with creativity. They value creativity. They've got expectations as to what they're asking for. My previous experience when talking to people from other industries or businesses, there's often a very large element of education that needs to go with that pitch. So just as an example, something that a lot of startups really need for a website at that stage is pure and simply communicating their idea and why they're there. Whether or not a company like a venture capital firm will acknowledge that that's something of value to, put money behind. I think there's a bit of education that might need to happen there as well. Or again, whether you guys would just say treat them like an agency type thing.
Right. I think you just have to find out what's important to them, because every single company, every single agency, they're all different in terms of their needs. So for venture capitalists, or even the companies that are funded, you might try and figure out, well, that's a compelling event. right? They just got funding, therefore they're looking to spend. And it might not be in branding. Maybe they're totally fine with branding, so they don't need that. Well, what do they need? What are they going to spend the money on? And if you can figure out that information, then you'll know whether or not you're a good fit or not. So I don't think there's a clear, absolute way other than asking questions, digging in and trying to understand their needs, so that when you develop a certain level of case studies for companies like this, then you can easily talk to venture capitalists that might be going to keep feeding you other well-funded tech companies or recently funded tech companies. And you could say, I help companies raise money. I could help startups raise money, right? If you're a presentation designer, for instance, you have a very clear expertise in that field. So all I could say is, if I were to approach it tomorrow and I'm starting to get into this, I would just start interviewing people, start asking people questions, and figuring out what's important to them, just like how Chris did with the real estate development company.
Yeah, honestly, I suspect that VCs are a little hard to get in touch with. I bet you that those walls are pretty high.
Mm-hmm.
So this could be a really good, this could be a really good strategy for that specific LinkedIn reach out, you know, where
Mm-hmm.
you're like, you're trying to find the connection and then go through your network to get there. But we also know that the VC world is gambling. It is gambling.
It's very risky.
Yeah, it's very risky. And so any time where you can show results, yes, it will. So in terms of this kind of customized strategy, if I could give any advice at all, it would be make sure that you have a good hardcore case study that can be summed up in a single line, and then work your network to get it into the hands of the VC. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Great question. Great idea, too. VCs, man. Yeah. Gatekeepers. That's going to go on the list.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough, but that's something that maybe we keep thinking on, because that's a good one. We don't normally like to play in that market because, like Ben said, it's pretty risky, and we like to go a little bit more slow and steady on stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on to Lauren. Lauren, if you want to jump on, and if Lauren can't ask her questions due to spotty internet, then we could also have Samuel ask it for her, because I know he's up after her.
Yeah, sure. Hopefully it works. Hi, guys.
Hello.
We made a connection with someone who works with our dream client, and we had a really good couple phone calls with them where they ended it with saying, "Oh, you're the expert. We trust you." They for a week, came back and asked more questions, and then they've disappeared for 2 or 3 weeks. And I don't know how to re-engage with them without just being like, "Hey, what's up?"
Okay, so what was the status before they disappeared, before they ghosted on you?
The status before was they wanted their website done real fast in a week turnaround, and we said, no, we have a process. And they kept saying, like, you know, the money part is not an issue, and they wanted to create a connection as a resource for their client. So I know they had a big like board meeting before that, and that's probably why they ghosted, but still don't want to necessarily lose that connection.
Yeah. So I have a resource for you. It's an email template. I'm going to find it and I'll post it in the Facebook group later, but it's perfect for this exact situation. And it's basically like, you want to be the one that quote unquote terminates things. Like, hey, notice that we haven't heard from you in a while. That's fantastic. Before I move on to other projects, and then you kind of ask them why they disappeared or something like that. I have the template saved. I'll post it in the Facebook group.
Okay. Does that kind of go along the lines of trying to kill the job?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's like you're walking away because you're saying you're getting too busy, and you're going to see if that's compelling enough for them to jump back in.
Right. And a lot of times when somebody gets that, it's like, they're like, oh, no, I don't want you to go away. I don't want you to, they'll chase you because you're recruiting. It's the classic kind of recruit and follow.
Right. Or you might reach out to somebody else in the company because something could have happened. And this has happened before where that person got terminated. That person is not there anymore. So you might want to reach out to somebody else who might have been previously CC'd or somebody that you can find through LinkedIn and say, hey, I haven't heard from Mary lately, and we were talking about the website. I just want to make sure she's all right and nothing's happened. Because like something could have happened, and that would be the worst. And you might have a little bit of empathy there just in case.
Okay, yeah.
I had somebody wind up in the hospital once, and it was right when the payment was due.
Oh, no.
I just hounded them. Oh yeah, big mistake. Hard lesson.
Thanks, guys.
Mm-hmm. Well, Samuel, you want to come on and ask your question, unless it's been answered?
No, yeah. So the model that my business partner and I run is that we're actually a nomadic branding studio. So we move around and go to different countries. And I was wondering how much work Blind do that is sort of cross-continent and completely remote, which is essentially what we're doing. And if these lead generation tactics actually work, whether you're in the same country as your prospect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most of the work that we do for our clients are here in the United States. Mm-hmm. I would say pretty much like 99%. There have been a few over the years where we've worked with Korean companies or Chinese companies over the years, but most of it has been in the US or mostly North America. We are partners, like people we subcontract to. Sometimes we have developers that we work with, and they're offshore. So I don't know if that helps at all, but that's just like we work with both the clients and clients are local, and the people that we outsource some stuff to are not local.
I'm going to spitball a number here. When I was running business development in 2017, 2018, I'm going to say 15 to 20% of the leads that came in were international. We had we had quite a few Chinese companies that wanted to branch into the States and stuff like that. But those jobs were always very kind of like long-term, or they were far out, and we never closed too many of them. So
right.
we would draw in leads just because of the portfolio and our reputation.
Right.
But I don't believe that we've closed those.
No.
Yeah.
And for us too, like in my experience, and this is probably just us, because we're not familiar with all the other different cultures, like those situations have always been kind of tricky for us, right? Like if we don't speak the same language, those jobs have been some of the most difficult, or the cultural sensitivities of the things that we understand or things that are safe or PC here could be totally taboo somewhere else. And so there's always like this weird clash. So we haven't had much success on our side in working with a lot of clients outside of the US. UK, because there's still a lot of cultural differences there. So we have done quite a bit of work in the UK. So I kind of bring that back. We've done some client work in Mexico as well, but the ones that are even further like east, those ones have been much more challenging for us.
I'd love to hear from you though. I mean, based on your experience, these tactics, especially with the nomadic thing that you have going on, how do you think that they would work for you?
Well, I mean, I'm guessing that with AdWords, I guess, would be another angle you could go down. You could put out the perception that you're in that local area. I mean, I guess my question about Blind was, are the clients you work with all locally based, as in you could just drive to them, or
done
over phone call or email or whatever?
Yeah, probably. I would say 98% of the clients we work with, we never meet in person.
Yeah,
it's just through phone calls or video chat. It's like this, even if they're down the street.
So I guess we're just kind of taking that theory and testing it across the continents and seeing how that works. See how it goes.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Cool concept.
But yeah, face to face, we only meet some people in person sometimes when we go to events or, but most of the time people prefer being on a call. It's just more convenient.
Yep.
Thanks.
Cool. So I think we got time for like one or two more.
Yeah.
I've got a follow-up question from last week as well. So just on the positioning, something Mr. Encina mentioned was that if you were going to brand blind today, you'd use subdomains because basically you've got multiple focuses.
Yeah.
Now, is that something that if you've got if you're struggling to basically find a niche and you don't want to give one element of your business up, is that something that you would recommend if they're complementary? Or would you suggest for smaller guys like us to just go on one focus and just kind of say, don't worry about the other side?
I say you just focus on one. I think what we've found is just like the more you splinter yourself, the less you're serving the thing that you should be focusing on. So I would rather you do a sprint where you have a week or two, or maybe even a month, where you say, I'm going to go all in on this one vertical. I'm going to really max out all of my efforts on this thing. I'm going to write all my copy and position myself and start talking in that way and see what the results are. I wouldn't spend time behind closed doors, keeping things behind a curtain, like trying to tweak all these things and then come up with language for 2 websites versus just doubling down on one. I think since I'm assuming you're a solopreneur, like you're a lot more nimble than we are to move an entire ship over here. Luckily, we have 23 years of experience and people know us for things. So we have a little bit of an advantage where we can kind of coast on this for a while, which we have been. But if we were to reposition in order to target specific markets that we find very profitable and enjoyable to work in, then that would be our approach. But
I think it's a great way to test, right? That's that kind of second option where you can test multiple things by doing subdomains.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to test new positionings. But yeah, splintering that, I don't think I would recommend that as a permanent solution.
Mm-hmm.
I have friends in Richmond that have been in the design business for 35 years or something crazy like that. And they actually hired Blair Enns as a consultant, which is very, very expensive. And he came in and forced them to pick a specialty. So they decided to specialize in healthcare. And they were worried because they had worked with tech startups and they had worked with, I'm sure some other clients, but they decided, let's go ahead and do healthcare. And the moment they did that, their business exploded. And they put a lot of faith into inbound marketing. And so when I was talking to the CEO, it's Franklin Street Design. When I was talking to the CEO, he said that they base their entire inbound strategy on their specialty. They'll literally go to trade shows and go to conventions in order to scrape the talks for pieces of content to talk about. So they'll go to one talk and then look at the speaker's 4 bullet points and then write 10 blog posts about each bullet point, because they know that they're at an industry convention. All of the healthcare service providers, everybody's there talking about healthcare things, and this is what's on everybody's mind. So they accredit their massive success to that one specialty. Mm-hmm. And if you had 2 or 3 or 4, I couldn't imagine doing all of that effort and all of that work 4 times.
Right. It's really tough. Just focus on one at a time, test. And if it's not working, then you move on to the next one. And I think as we do iterations of our raw material of positioning from last week and the business development this week, getting your feedback like this is helpful. So I encourage all of you guys to give us more feedback, things that you feel like are missing or questions you might have, so that in future iterations of this material, we might address that, or we might have a quick solution or templates already to feed you guys. So help us out and we'll do our best to help you out. So I think we have time for just one last question, and then we'll get on to homework and the next steps. So if somebody wants to come on and ask their question, that would be awesome. Anyone? Any questions? No? Okay.
They're all lead gen pros. Love it.
All right. If there's no questions, then we will move on and we'll go share screen.
I've got a small question, but I don't want to be a question hog.
The man with the questions. Let's do it.
Yeah. So just on kind of testing markets or testing whether or not our, I suppose, our direction is a good direction to follow. Before I came into this course, I was redoing my website And I thought that I had, I thought, hey, I've got a niche. But reflecting on that, that niche was just way too broad. It was not a niche at all. It was basically saying I do everything for you guys.
Right.
Now, if I want to test something, I need a website, right? So, and with that website, I'd kind of want to do enough that I can get, or basically give it a proper test, but without putting so much effort into creating the world's best website. Do you guys have any kind of advice as to what you can get away with as a website for this type of exercise?
Why do you feel like you need a website to test the positioning?
Validation. So if I'm going to put myself out there as an expert, I would expect people to, first thing they'll do is they'll Google me or have a look at my website. That's just kind of an expectation.
I get it. And that's something that you should be doing. But if you're in the testing phase, one of the things that I recommend to my consulting clients is just like start small. Give somebody a call. Do one of the cold, warm calls that we've listed here to something that's like, maybe one of the underdogs on your list, and just tell them, hey, I'm considering repositioning myself as because I'm so passionate about X, Y, and Z. And just see how they respond to that. And that's a great way to start asking the right kind of questions and seeing if they're going to respond to your expertise in the area. I would do that before setting down and creating a website if the positioning, if that kind of specialty is very new to you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of if there's anything else that you might do. For me, and I think what I adopt a lot from Chris is trying to do things quickly and test to figure out if it's worth spending more time on it. So what you might do in order to test the viability of this market, look at the competition, look at all the other service providers that are trying to do the things that you're doing, and look at the language that they're using. Look at the case studies that they're using and who they've worked with. That's an easy way to cheat. You can cobble together all of the stuff that they've done. You could take this person's title here, the way they describe and talk of themselves here, and you could just stand up a site. Like, what is the one we used to make quick landing pages on?
Unbounce.
Unbounce. Unbounce is one way to do it, but there's so many template websites where you could just stand up a landing page, use the language from your competitors, and then start reaching out so that you have that point of contact or validation. And you could toss up any relevant case studies or information there that might help lead somebody to you or prove your validation points, because you do need to do that. And the other point that Ben was saying is if you find the right people in the market, just interview them.
Yeah.
Just interview them, call them and ask them for 10 minutes of their time, and you have questions about their space. So I think there's a lot of tactics that you can do to help validate that. And I know this is something that we might have left you guys a little bit high and dry from last week because we didn't have enough time to dedicate to this. But because this is coming up, and this is a great question, by the way, this is forcing us to think, how else might we tackle that? So thank you for planting the seed. Hopefully some of this is going to be helpful right now. And we're going to continue to develop this stuff so that we can figure out, are these worthwhile strategies and what else other people are doing out there.
Listen, the interview strategy, we had been toying around with putting it in this presentation, but we figured that it was just one more thing for you guys to tackle.
Yeah.
But it is such a massive, massive opportunity. It helps you create content, which is part of any good long-term lead generation strategy. And it puts you on the phone with somebody like the design director of Coca-Cola for an hour. I mean, that guy doesn't even have an hour for anything else. You'd never be able to talk with that guy for an hour in any other circumstance. So having a piece of content, having a podcast or a blog that you're interviewing the people from your target audience is a massive way to do research and make sure that you're testing that kind of specialty. So huge win there.
And most people are flattered by the opportunity. They're like, I know it feels weird to ask somebody for an interview, but I say yes most of the time. People's like, I have a podcast. I don't even check. Like, sure, I'd love to come on, because it's flattery and you want to spread and share your message. Everybody wants to share a little bit more about their expertise and what they do.
Yeah.
And people are just trying to market themselves. So you'll be surprised how low the barrier to entry is if you say, I want to interview you for a blog and just get a few nuggets from you, or I'm interviewing experts in the field on the thing that you do. Flattery. Oh, of course, I'd love to come on. And so it's a lot easier than you think.
But I would just look at alternate ways. I mean, a website is just one way to start proving that expertise. I mean, you could even write articles like, hey, I'm changing my business. Here's why. And then just start breaking it down. Like start to build momentum and build that transition in place before you actually like flip the switch on a different website.
John has a follow-up question. He's just asking about writing the 10 blog posts. Was that after the event and taking the material from the conference? Is the speaker talks or the basis of the blog post?
Yes. Yeah. So they would go to these events, they would go to the speeches, and then they would take notes. And then based on the notes that they would take, they would write blog posts that shared their perspective on what these people were talking about. And there's a specific example. When you work in healthcare and you work in healthcare marketing, you have to navigate around something called HIPAA in the United States. And I don't know what it stands for, but it's basically a privacy law. You can't share any patient information, and it's a very, very real thing. And so HIPAA and marketing was a massive topic at a healthcare convention. And so what Franklin Street did was they took that and they wrote hundreds of blog posts based on the insights that they were able to gain from the convention. So not only were they sharing new information that maybe not everybody had access to, but they also shared their perspective and opinions on this hot topic.
Right.
So that's that beginning of the funnel.
Right.
It's huge for them.
Yeah. So there's a whole thing we didn't cover today because obviously we're over time already, which is inbound. All we talked about today was outbound marketing, meaning you go to them and try to drum up the connection.
Right.
The thing that we didn't talk about is inbound marketing, which a lot of it is driven by content and reinforcing your positioning statement. So if you guys spend time studying people like us, like the Future Channel, we're trying to reinforce our expertise in brand strategy, creative entrepreneurship, and probably the reason why you're here. Mm-hmm. If you look at other people that we've been referencing and talking about, Blair Enns, go to his website, look at the blogs he's talking about. It's reinforcing all of his expertise, which is value-based pricing and how to price creativity. Same with Jonathan Stark, stop pricing hourly, value-based pricing specifically for the niche of web development. And he's been growing that to more creatives and other people outside of that. But he started with a very tiny niche on a very particular subject, and he's just been growing it. So study that. That's the easiest way I could show that you guys can gain some insight from that. But inbound marketing is a whole nother 2 hours or 10 hours.
At least.
It's a lot. It's a lot. And maybe this is something that can come up. And as you guys percolate and think about stuff, just ask us questions in the Facebook group, on the Q&A calls, and I will be happy to help. But I know it's a very deep topic that we wanted to just give you guys some quick wins because this is an easy lead in to the next 7 weeks of Business Boot Camp, which I think we should transition to now. So what is the homework for this week and what's coming up next?
All right. Yeah. Share this screen. You should have primed me before, Matthew. Not enough time. Just kidding. Okay. Here's the homework. Number one, let's just get your basics in order. If you don't have a My Business listing on Google, make it happen. If you don't have a website currently, let's stand something up. Let's just get those basics in order so that as you go through the rest of the exercises, the leads land on something. You're able to drop those breadcrumbs and make sure that the people follow you through the site or through, your business card. Just get those basics in order. Number two, just pick one tactic to try. We gave you 4. Pick one. And for those of you guys who aren't used to cold calling or, you're not, hardcore salespeople, start small. Try the referral option and, ask for those referrals. But just try one tactic. And here's how you do this. And we call this the penny drill. Actually, this comes straight from Jim Rohn. It's an old sales trick. So you start each week with 2 glasses, one of which is full of 20 pennies. And for every action that you take, every person that you reach out to, just move 1 penny over to the next jar. And at the end of the week, all of the pennies should be over in the next jar. It's just a nice little, kinetic way to track your progress through the week. So that's it.
You just do that every week.
Every week.
Just building the muscle, building the habit. And through the next 7 weeks of Business Boot Camp, because Monday we officially start this course, we're going to take you from that moment where now you're getting leads. How do you close them at higher rates? How do you qualify them? And then how do you start to have these more meaningful conversations with them so that you can surface the most valuable insights that you need to solve and charge the most amount of money for that. So that's what the next 7 weeks is going to be. I know this is a little crazy for us to jam these first 2 weeks, but I'm thankful that you guys have joined us on the beta versions of this lead generation topic. Again, if you have follow-up questions or feedback or things that you feel like we missed, just leave them in the events page.
Yeah.
Ben and I will comb through that and continue to build this for you guys.
Yeah. We'd love the critique. Yeah. We'd love for you guys to poke holes in it, ask questions, because that's the only way this thing gets better. This is how Business Bootcamp was created. Started in person and then evolved over time. So, but I can't wait for you guys to get started next week. It's a game changer.
Yeah. So Monday, I think around 11 a.m. our time, what we're going to do is we're going to post in the Facebook group and let you guys know lecture 1 is available.
Yep.
And so you guys are going to, you're going to watch that on your own time, which is about 90 minutes to 2 hours. I forget at this point. And from there, you're going to partner up with somebody else in the group. Hopefully you guys have already been making connections. I see you guys reaching out. If not, you could start a thread and then just connect with each other there. Then you're going to practice week 1 homework, and it's going to be pretty challenging. It's not an easy thing. And then we'll have the Q&A sessions on Friday in the morning and in the evening, 1 hour each. And you just come on there to bring us your challenges with this week's material. Okay.
I think with that, guys, thanks so much. And we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great weekend and can't wait to see you next week.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks, Abe. See you
Bye.
later.
Bye.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys. Thank you.